Most people don't fail because they lack talent or luck, they fail because they quit too early, they listen to fear more than their dreams, they wait for the right time, that never comes, they follow the crowd instead of their purpose, they get comfortable with average, they avoid discomfort, they blame circumstances, they chase motivation instead of discipline, and they never raise their standards. But you won't because you're willing to do what's hard, stay when it's boring, learn when it hurts, act when others hesitate, and commit to becoming the person your goals demand. Most people fail not because they are weak but because they never decide who they want to become, they wake up without direction, they react instead of acting, they scroll more than they build, they trade long-term vision for short-term comfort, they let small excuses grow into permanent habits, they fear judgment more than regret, they talk about goals but avoid the work, they confuse busy with productive, they expect clarity before action, they wait for confidence instead of earning it, they start but don't stay consistent, they dream loudly but move silently, they underestimate time, and slowly their potential fades without a fight. Most people fail because they fall in love with motivation instead of discipline, they work only when they feel inspired, they quit when excitement disappears, they don't show up on boring days, they avoid repetition, they resist routine, they want results without sacrifice, they want growth without pain, they want success without struggle, they think talent beats effort, they ignore fundamentals, they skip the basics, they chase shortcuts, they envy winners without copying their habits, and they forget that consistency always beats intensity. Most people fail because they listen to the wrong voices, they absorb negativity like truth, they let family doubts shape their limits, they allow society to define success for them, they compare their chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, they scroll through highlight reels and feel behind, they seek approval before progress, they fear standing alone, they follow crowds that are lost, they silence their intuition, they avoid responsibility, they wait to be chosen, they don't back themselves, they hesitate at decisions, and hesitation slowly becomes a lifestyle. Most people fail because they don't master their mindset, they think problems mean stop instead of grow, they see failure as identity instead of feedback, they quit after rejection, they collapse after criticism, they personalize setbacks, they carry past losses into the future, they replay old mistakes, they label themselves unlucky, they underestimate resilience, they don't train mental toughness, they avoid pressure, they fear risk, they choose safety over significance, and comfort quietly steals their ambition. Most people fail because they never raise their standards, they accept average relationships, average income, average routines, average thinking, they tolerate disrespect, they normalize chaos, they excuse laziness, they allow distractions to rule their days, they don't protect focus, they don't control their time, they settle for less than they want, they negotiate with their goals, they lower expectations after setbacks, they live on autopilot, and average slowly becomes permanent. You won't fail because you choose awareness over excuses, you choose responsibility over blame, you choose progress over perfection, you choose discipline over comfort, you show up when motivation disappears, you train even when no one is watching, you build habits before results, you focus on inputs not applause, you understand that growth feels uncomfortable, you accept pressure as part of the process, you learn from mistakes instead of hiding from them, you invest in yourself daily, you protect your vision, you respect your time, and you refuse to quit. You won't fail because you understand failure differently, you see it as data not defeat, you analyze instead of emotionalizing, you adjust instead of abandoning, you stay in the game longer than others, you learn faster from losses, you don't let ego block lessons, you welcome feedback, you stay coachable, you adapt when plans change, you remain patient during delays, you trust the process, you play the long game, you value consistency, you measure progress honestly, and you keep moving forward. You won't fail because you design your environment for success, you limit distractions, you control your inputs, you choose better company, you learn from people ahead of you, you cut off energy drains, you build routines that support your goals, you respect sleep and health, you manage your time intentionally, you plan your days with purpose, you create structure, you track habits, you reduce decision fatigue, you simplify focus, and you make success easier than failure. You won't fail because you act before you feel ready, you don't wait for perfect conditions, you move with clarity built through action, you take small steps daily, you compound effort over time, you stay committed during slow progress, you understand overnight success is built in silence, you stay consistent when results are invisible, you trust delayed rewards, you resist instant gratification, you think in years not weeks, you invest patiently, you stay grounded, you remain humble, and you let time work in your favor. In the end, most people fail because they stop, and you won't because you don't. You keep going when it's hard, you keep building when it's quiet, you keep learning when it's painful. You keep believing when doubt creeps in, you stay disciplined when motivation fades, you hold the vision when progress is slow, you commit fully to growth, you raise your standards daily, you become relentless with purpose, you refuse average, you choose courage over comfort, you choose effort over excuses, you choose consistency over intensity, You choose action over fear, and that choice changes everything. Most people fail because they never commit fully. They keep one foot in and one foot out. They chase safety while dreaming of greatness. They want guarantees before effort. They test goals instead of deciding. They hesitate at crossroads. They delay hard choices. They avoid burning bridges. They keep backup plans that drain focus. They dilute energy. They half try, they half believe, they half show up, they half build. And half effort always creates half results. Most people fail because they don't respect time. They waste mornings. They ignore routines. They overestimate what they can do in a day. They underestimate what they can build in a year. They procrastinate important work. They choose comfort activities first. They delay deep work. They live reactively. They let notifications control attention. They start days without plans. They end days without reflection. They repeat the same mistakes. They confuse motion with progress, and time quietly passes without growth. Most people fail because they avoid discomfort. They run from hard conversations. They escape challenging work. They quit when learning feels slow. They stop when effort hurts. They retreat at resistance. They misread struggle as failure. They forget that growth demands pressure. They expect ease. They resent effort. They chase convenience. They fear pain. They avoid sacrifice. They stay soft in a hard world, and potential remains unused. Most people fail because they lack patience. They want fast results. They expect quick wins. They quit when progress is invisible. They abandon systems too early. They judge themselves daily. They panic at slow growth. They compare timelines. They rush decisions. They skip foundations. They chase trends. They jump strategies. They reset goals repeatedly. They break momentum, and impatience robs them of compounding success. Most people fail because they don't learn from history. They repeat the same errors. They ignore patterns. They resist self-reflection. They avoid accountability. They blame circumstances. They blame people. They blame luck. They protect their ego. They reject feedback. They stay defensive. They refuse responsibility. They don't study what works. They don't study what fails, and they stay stuck in cycles. You won't fail because you commit without negotiating. You decide and move forward. You cut distractions decisively. You align actions with goals. You choose focus over options. You remove escape routes. You go all in mentally. You accept uncertainty. You trust your ability to adapt. You stop waiting for approval. You act with conviction. You build momentum daily. You stay locked in. You honor your decisions. And commitment becomes your advantage. You won't fail because you treat time like currency. You invest mornings wisely. You schedule priorities first. You protect deep work. You track progress honestly. You review and adjust weekly. You value consistency. You build systems, not moods. You finish what you start. You close open loops. You compound small wins. You respect deadlines. You stay intentional. You reduce waste, and time starts working for you. You won't fail because you train yourself to handle discomfort. You lean into hard moments. You do difficult things daily. You strengthen discipline. You build mental endurance. You reframe pain as progress. You welcome challenges. You grow through resistance. You stop seeking easy paths. You develop grit. You stay calm under pressure. You embrace responsibility. You harden your standards. You expand capacity, and strength becomes normal. You won't fail because you stay patient and persistent. You trust long-term effort. You let results take time. You stay consistent without applause. You work when no one notices. You respect the process. You keep routines boring and effective. You stay grounded during delays. You resist comparison. You think in decades. You allow compounding to work. You stay steady. You stay focused. You stay disciplined. And patience protects your progress. You won't fail because you evolve constantly. You learn from mistakes quickly. You adjust strategies intelligently. You seek feedback actively. You study people ahead of you. You upgrade skills regularly. You refine habits. You sharpen focus. You improve 1% daily. You stay curious. You stay humble. You stay adaptable. You keep growing. You keep refining, and growth becomes inevitable. Most people fail because they live on autopilot. They repeat the same days expecting different results. They wake up tired and sleep unfulfilled. They avoid self-awareness. They don't question habits. They follow routines they never designed. They react to life instead of creating it. They drift without intention. They numb themselves with entertainment. They escape reality instead of improving it. They confuse comfort with happiness. They ignore inner dissatisfaction. They delay change. They stay stuck in familiar pain, and nothing ever truly changes. Most people fail because they underestimate discipline. They think freedom comes first. They chase pleasure before structure. They resist boundaries. They reject schedules. They avoid rules. They see discipline as restriction. They don't realize discipline creates freedom. They lack daily non-negotiables. They let emotions control actions. They live by moods. They break promises to themselves. They erode self-trust. They weaken confidence, and momentum never forms. Most people fail because they don't protect their energy. They say yes too often. They overcommit. They allow toxic people access. They tolerate draining environments. They ignore rest. They sacrifice sleep. They neglect health. They run on burnout. They confuse exhaustion with dedication. They don't recharge intentionally. They lose clarity. They lose focus. They lose patience. They lose creativity, and performance collapses. Most people fail because they fear responsibility, they avoid ownership, they blame systems, they blame bosses, they blame economy, they blame timing, they give power away, they wait to be saved, they expect rescue, they avoid leadership in their own life, they don't make decisions, they delay accountability, they resist growth roles, they shrink from pressure, they avoid risk, and control slips away. Most people fail because they don't finish, they start strong and fade fast, they chase new ideas before completing old ones, they abandon projects near the end, they get bored at the final stretch. They underestimate the value of completion, they love starting more than succeeding, they fear final judgment, they self-sabotage near success, they delay launches, they hesitate at execution, they break momentum, they lose confidence, they repeat cycles and nothing compounds. You won't fail because you design your days intentionally, you plan before reacting, you set clear priorities, you question habits honestly, you create routines that serve growth, you choose purpose over autopilot, you stay present, you reduce mindless consumption. You face discomfort directly, you act with awareness, you align actions with values, you build days that build futures, you respect your inner signals, you commit to change, and direction replaces drift. You won't fail because you respect discipline as power, you create structure first, you set non-negotiables, you act regardless of mood, you keep promises to yourself, you build self-trust, you train consistency, you master routines, you simplify decisions, you reduce emotional chaos. You earn freedom through effort, you stay grounded, you stay sharp, you stay focused, and discipline becomes your edge. You won't fail because you guard your energy fiercely, you choose people wisely, you say no without guilt, you protect your time, you respect rest, you fuel your body, you prioritize sleep, you work sustainably, you recharge intentionally, you manage stress, you maintain clarity, you preserve creativity, you stay balanced, you stay resilient, and energy supports excellence. You won't fail because you claim full responsibility, you stop blaming external factors, you take ownership of outcomes, you make hard decisions early, you lead yourself first, you accept pressure as privilege, you step into growth roles, you develop courage, you choose action over excuses, you stay decisive, you build confidence through responsibility, you grow stronger under weight, you expand capacity, you gain control, and power returns to you. You won't fail because you finish what you start, you push through the final stretch, you respect completion, you execute despite fear, you ship imperfectly, you learn publicly, you close loops, you build momentum, you gain credibility, you strengthen belief, you compound wins, you create evidence, you trust yourself more, you aim higher next time, and success becomes repeatable. Most people fail because they confuse planning with progress, they spend weeks thinking and seconds doing, they overanalyze simple steps, they wait for perfect strategies, they drown in information, they consume more than they create. They save ideas instead of executing them, they fear wrong moves, they stall at decisions, they mistake research for action, they hide behind preparation, they delay exposure, they avoid real feedback, they stay in theory and nothing materializes. Most people fail because they don't control their thoughts, they replay negative stories, they speak doubt internally, they imagine worst outcomes, they catastrophize mistakes, they label themselves limited, they attach identity to failure, they ignore positive evidence, they dismiss small wins, they sabotage confidence. They carry mental clutter, they don't practice gratitude, they don't reframe challenges, they don't train awareness, and mindset quietly erodes effort. Most people fail because they chase validation, they want likes before results, they seek applause before mastery, they adjust goals for approval, they perform for others, they fear criticism publicly, they dilute authenticity, they avoid standing out, they measure worth by opinions, they lose self-direction, they hesitate at bold moves, they shrink ambition, they compromise values, they prioritize image, and growth stalls. Most people fail because they ignore fundamentals, they skip basics, they rush advanced tactics, they want hacks without foundations, they avoid boring work, they underestimate simple habits, they neglect repetition, they abandon consistency, they jump from method to method, they reset constantly, they don't master skills, they avoid practice, they expect shortcuts, they overlook process, and excellence never forms. Most people fail because they don't build resilience, they break under pressure, they crumble at setbacks, they retreat after losses, they avoid recovery, they dwell on mistakes, they don't bounce back fast, they personalize failure, they lose belief, they spiral emotionally, they lack coping tools, they avoid reflection, they suppress lessons, they fear trying again, and setbacks become endings. You won't fail because you execute before overthinking. You act on clarity not perfection, you move with imperfect plans, you learn by doing, you value momentum, you turn ideas into action, you accept mistakes as tuition, you seek real feedback, you iterate fast, you stay practical, you convert learning into results, you stay decisive, you build confidence through movement, you stay grounded, and progress accelerates. You won't fail because you master your inner dialogue, you replace doubt with discipline, you speak constructively to yourself. You interrupt negative loops, you train focus, you practice gratitude daily, you collect small wins, you reframe setbacks, you protect mental space, you stay solution-oriented, you build emotional control, you stay mentally fit, you strengthen belief, you stay consistent, and mindset supports momentum. You won't fail because you stop chasing validation, you define success internally, you build quietly, you value mastery over applause, you accept criticism calmly, you stay authentic, you trust your vision, you move independently, you stand firm in values, you embrace being misunderstood, you focus on impact, you measure progress honestly, you keep standards high, you stay self-directed, and confidence deepens. You won't fail because you respect fundamentals deeply, you master basics first, you practice daily, you embrace boring work, you repeat until solid, you build skills brick by brick, you avoid shortcuts, you trust process, you stay patient with growth, you refine technique, you compound effort, you develop mastery, you gain leverage, you build excellence, and results become inevitable. You won't fail because you grow resilient through adversity, you recover quickly, you learn from setbacks, you regulate emotions, you stay calm under pressure, you maintain perspective, you adapt strategies, you keep belief alive, you return stronger, you use pain as fuel, you develop toughness, you trust yourself more, you stay courageous, you keep moving forward, and nothing stops you. Most people fail because they avoid honesty with themselves, they lie about effort, they exaggerate progress, they ignore weaknesses, they avoid self-audits, they pretend habits are fine, they protect comfort stories, they resist truth, they delay tough reflections, they avoid measuring results, they don't track actions, they confuse intention with execution, they overestimate discipline, they underestimate distractions, and self-deception blocks growth. Most people fail because they don't build identity around growth, they see change as temporary, they rely on willpower, they treat habits as chores, they don't become the type of person who wins, they act inconsistently, they revert under pressure, they lack self-image alignment, they sabotage progress unconsciously, they don't rewrite identity narratives, they cling to old labels, they fear becoming different, they resist evolution, they stay predictable and transformation never sticks. Most people fail because they misuse comfort, they reward themselves too early, they celebrate before earning, they relax at the first sign of progress, they lose urgency, they stop pushing edges, they confuse balance with stagnation, they indulge distractions, they numb ambition, they lower intensity, they drift into ease, they delay next levels, they stretch breaks too long, they forget hunger, and momentum dies. Most people fail because they don't think strategically, they react emotionally, they make decisions impulsively, they chase short-term relief, they ignore second-order effects, they don't plan consequences, they repeat patterns, they fail to zoom out, they avoid long-term thinking, they misallocate effort, they confuse urgency with importance, they don't prioritize leverage, they scatter focus, they waste energy, and outcomes suffer. Most people fail because they isolate at the wrong times, they avoid asking for help, they see support as weakness, they refuse mentorship, they don't learn from others' mistakes, they reinvent wheels, they stay stuck in their own perspective, they don't build networks, they avoid collaboration, they lack accountability, they operate alone too long, they miss opportunities, they slow growth, they limit exposure, and progress stalls. You won't fail because you practice radical honesty, you track inputs daily, you measure results clearly, you audit habits regularly, you confront weaknesses directly, you tell yourself the truth, you remove comforting lies, you adjust based on data, you take responsibility early, you stay grounded in reality, you close gaps intentionally, you respect feedback, you stay accountable, you stay disciplined, and clarity drives progress. You won't fail because you become the person your goals require, you align identity with action, you build habits that match self-image, you act consistently under pressure, you reinforce winning behaviors, you update old narratives, you let go of limiting labels, you normalize growth, you embody discipline, you become reliable to yourself, you live your standards, you evolve intentionally, you stay congruent, you stay committed, and change becomes permanent. You won't fail because you use comfort wisely, you delay rewards, you earn rest, you maintain urgency, you push edges intentionally, you balance recovery with hunger, you stay sharp after wins, you avoid complacency, you protect momentum, you keep standards high, you respect cycles, you stay driven, you stay alert, you stay disciplined, and progress continues. You won't fail because you think strategically, you plan before reacting, you consider long-term outcomes, you prioritize leverage, you allocate effort smartly, you reduce noise, you focus on what matters, you act with intention, you review decisions, you learn from patterns, you improve systems, you optimize processes, you stay proactive, you stay decisive, and results multiply. You won't fail because you seek support intelligently, you learn from mentors, you ask better questions, you accept guidance, you build strong networks, you collaborate when needed, you stay accountable, you expose blind spots, you accelerate learning, you avoid isolation traps, you grow faster with feedback, you expand perspective, you stay connected, you stay humble, and progress compounds. In the end, most people fail because they stop choosing growth when it gets uncomfortable, they lower their standards when pressure rises, they retreat when results are delayed, they settle when resistance appears, and they quit silently. But you won't, because you decide every single day to show up, to stay disciplined when motivation fades, to keep moving when progress feels slow, to hold the vision when doubt gets loud, to raise your standards again and again, and to keep going long after most People give up until effort turns into identity and identity turns into success.